Welcome back once again to Lessons from the Table. Same shirt, different day. In this episode, insert appropriate musical joke here, is titled Lean on Me. Because that's what I want you to do if you're a player at my table. Lean on me. What I mean by this, the DM comes to the table having prepared the session, prepared the combats, previously prepared the world, the campaign as a whole, arguably. And I don't mean they've meticulously laid everything out. I mean, you've done all the behind-the-scenes stuff. The player comes to the table to play in that world, to ask the DM questions. If I want to do this, where should I go? Can I do this? Can I see this enemy in this combat? Those questions are good. I want the player to ask me those sorts of questions. I do not expect the player to come to the table and know all those things off the cuff. I know them, they don't. That's why they ask me. They lean on my knowledge. I have a couple of players, as I imagine a lot of DMs do, who aren't always so great with the rules, or forget class abilities and things like that. And that's fine. Some people do get frustrated by this. There are people out there who go, man, you do this every week. How have you not learned all these rules yet? Well, it's because they've got a lot of other stuff going on, right? Like, some people just don't work like that. Some people won't just remember something because they do it once every single week. Different people's memories work different ways. They prioritize different things. That's it, right? Like, I know people who can recite things that they learned in school years and years ago, so long as they pertain to mathematics, but they couldn't for the life of you tell you the lyrics to a song that they've been listening to non-stop for the last 2 weeks. Different people's memories just work in different ways. That's fine. I don't expect my players to come to the table with this flawless memory of the rules. I don't even need to have that. I can just look it up. Here's the thing. If a player comes to my table each week, their job isn't to know how to play D&D. Their job is to sell appliances Monday to Friday and then come to my house on Sunday to play some D&D and unwind and relax with their friends through this medium. My job is to help them out with the rules. Lean on your DM if you are a player who is a little unfamiliar with things. If you ask the same question every single week, that is fine. It's completely fine. And I know a lot of people do get frustrated by that. You need to learn to let that frustration go. Just because you engage with the game in such a way that has you remembering all of this stuff week to week to week doesn't mean other people have to do that. There is no correct way to play the game or learn or indeed not learn the rules of Dungeons and Dragons. I think the only person at the table who needs to really decently know the rules is the Dungeon Master. And as I said before, you don't even need to memorize it. You don't need to be perfect and flawless. You don't need to be quizzed on it. You do need to just have a good grasp on it. Let's go a little bit deeper into that now, because what I mean when I say you don't need a perfect memory is you are the rules during play, and the actual rule books are very clear on that. The DM has the final say. The DM is the law at the table. They are the rules of the game. Now, this is something I set very clearly with my players. I don't like doing rule disputes. I don't like going back and forth. I don't mind if I get something a bit wrong, or if I forget something or misinterpret something and someone else corrects me. I will not stand for players saying, actually, it should work like this. I interpret it like this. This is like this. When I say, this is how it's going to work, that's it, and it's final. Now, if I'm not remembering something, I'm not sure how something works, I can look it up. If it's going to be a quick one, I definitely do. I find there are very few situations, though, where I absolutely have to. A lot of the time, you can just say, well, it makes sense to do it like this. So let's just do it like this for now, and I'll look it up at the end of the session, and if we need to change it, we'll change it moving forward from here. That tends to satisfy most of my players. Well, I say most. What I mean is all. I've never had any problems with doing it that way. And I set that expectation. Guys, this is how I handle situations where we're not clear on rules. If I need to look something up and it's going to take a while, I'll just make a ruling. I don't want play to grind to a halt. I set that expectation out in advance with my players so that they know to expect that. If you just spring that on players, sometimes it's a bit unsatisfying. It's like, well, hold on, I don't want to just do your random stopgap. Let's find the actual rule. Let's do this right. I can understand why players will feel that way, which is why I set this expectation. So you as a DM, I recommend you set that expectation with your players, that you will make rulings in-game to help facilitate the flow of play so that things don't grind to a halt while you look things up. That allows you as the DM to not even need to have a full grasp on the rules. You don't need to know everything. You can not know certain things and just look them up. There are things that I do like my players to know, though. And they tend to be things like abilities and spells. Spells are an especially big one. There are a lot of spells in Dungeons & Dragons. I am not going to remember all of them, and I never am. And often I'll just look them up. Looking them up is quick enough once you've got used to kind of navigating that part of the player's handbook. That's all well and good. When someone goes, okay, I'm going to cast this spell, often I'll just start flicking through and looking it up, and it's quick enough that it doesn't grind things to a halt. If they've got a question about it, hey, how does this interact with this? I'll often just have a quick gaze at it, and if I can quickly make a ruling based off that, then I will. Oh, okay, it's clearly like this. Yeah, this is how it works. If it's a little bit less certain, I'll go, oh, yeah, okay, I see the conflict here. I'll do a bit more reading on this and see what other opinions are out there. But for now, here's how we're going to do it. And that's all you got to do. Make sure the play doesn't slow down too much. That is imperative. You don't want to sit there for 5 minutes, going back and forth. Well, you could argue it's like this. You could argue it's like this. Oh, yeah, I see your point, but what about this? Yada, yada. Okay, and then we finally arrive at the thing. And, well, actually, they missed the spell altogether. So, all right, who's next in the initiative? Okay, your turn now. Everyone else sat there doing nothing. It's not fun. It's not fun for anyone. We're playing D&D to have fun for the most part. So, what I mean by this is the players can and should lean on the DM for rulings as well as for rules, for understanding of how things work in the game. I do have players where every single week they need to be reminded of the difference between a spell where you need to make an attack roll and a spell where the enemy needs to make a save. That's fine. I can just say, you need to make an attack roll for that. Okay, cool. That didn't take long. It's easy enough. It's not a big deal if they don't remember that week to week. That's fine. I don't need them to. They don't have to. Because I remember that that's how it works. I can just remind them. I do like my players to know their spells, or at the very least, when they're going to cast one, have looked it up and are clear on what it does, so that if I ask them, how does that work again? They can go, oh, they need to make a save, it does this, this happens, okay, cool, let's go. Lean on your DM. And DM, learn to lean on your players a little bit too, because you can. What's important is that you establish that that is how things can work. Again, I establish the expectation with my players that I know the rules well enough that if you are unclear on something, ask me. And I've also established with my players that I am not going to remember every single spell. You need to remind me how those work if you're casting a specific one. And that's not hard to do. Everyone is more than happy to do that because it helps facilitate good, easy, quick play. And there is one other area as well I find players can and should lean on DMs. This is something that I end up using a lot. We use Theatre of the Mind combat a significant amount, purely because I find it's not always easy to arrange a bespoke map. I like my maps to look good. I'm not particularly good at drawing, and I don't think it's very fun to just do a straight, here's a thing on a grid. If we're fighting creatures in a forest, I would rather at least look like a forest if we're going to do a map. If not, then, well, we'll do Theatre of the Mind, and I can paint a nice, vivid picture of a forest so that you feel like you're fighting in a forest. I think there's a weird disconnect that happens when you describe a forest and trees coming to life, and then the battle map is just a plain white piece of paper with a grid and some squares. It's not a forest. That's a snowfield with a peculiar chessboard pattern on it, right? That's not very immersive, in my honest opinion. And I know that not everyone's going to agree with me, but where I'm going with this is I use Theatre of the Mind a lot, which means sometimes people are going to be a little unclear on where exactly they are. That's fine. The thing with Theatre of the Mind is you don't all need to have the exact same picture in your head. I think that's a big mistake a lot of people make when they're doing Theatre of the Mind combat. We act as though everyone needs to be picturing the precise same thing. No, they don't. I need to picture precisely what is going on. Other players will have a bit of it. They'll have a slightly vague picture, or maybe they didn't really pay attention to where this other guy moved to, or, what have you. All that matters is that I am keeping track. And when it comes to a player's turn, they go, okay, so can I see this bandit? Yes, you can. How far away? About 45 feet. Okay, cool. I want to move 15 feet up towards them. And between that, just describing things physically and the occasional hand gesture, okay, you're here, this person's like over here, and this person's here, everyone gets a decent enough picture that we can functionally get through combat. I have had enormous combats play out with exclusively theater of the mind. I had a combat run with a total of 150 enemy mobs, plus the party of 7. Now, a lot of these mobs operated in squads, but all that mattered is I had a clear picture of where things were. And the party had a clear enough picture that they were able to successfully navigate the physicalities of that combat. That was all perfectly fine. And the mind does something really interesting. If you thought it was one particular way and then something happens that kind of challenges that notion, your brain will just rewrite it all so that it still makes sense. It doesn't just discontinue and shut down and shit, now I've got no idea what's going on in this combat. Your brain just recalibrates, adjusts. Oh, right, I didn't realize that this corridor was wide enough for that to go down it. But okay, it's just been this wide all along. That's fine. That's how people's minds work. So when you're in that situation, again, as a player, lean on the DM. Totally do that. They're the one who needs to have the clearer picture. Where's the sun in the sky? Right now it's maybe mid-noon. It's just a little bit past overhead. It is quite late in the winter, though, so it's sort of roughly that angle out from you. Oh, okay, cool. The player didn't need to keep track of the day and what time it was and, you know, how much time had passed and what season it is and how the cosmology of the world works. Only the DM did, and I know that because I made that world. I've already done all that. It's just there. Lean on your DM. Lean on their knowledge. Lean on what they know. And if you've maybe misimagined something or what you had previously thought was true doesn't actually line up, you'll just readjust. That's just how that works. That's how that happens. And as DMs, let players lean on you. Encourage it. Get them to ask you questions if need be. It doesn't mean you sit there and go, does anyone want to know where the sun is? But you can just throw it in one point as you're traveling. Sun starts to get low on the horizon. It is winter and the sun takes a low arc across the sky. It never gets really close to being overhead. And now, even though there's still many hours before you would consider it to be late, the sun is going down. And your players are going to realize this guy, this DM, he's got a good handle on the cosmology of the world and what season we're in and all this stuff. And then next time they do maybe want to know, they've got a reason to ask about it. They will know that they can ask and that you will know the answer. Let players lean on you. Learn when you can lean on your players. And happy gaming. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you next week.